And I think, given the current climate that we're in, I think there'll be more and more businesses looking at how do we variabilise our costs. And that may not necessarily mean outsourcing it all to some other country, which is actually there's a trend to onshore, or at least there was.
Reshoring, yeah.
Reshoring. But, I think it's that we are in a climate now, I think, where businesses probably need to think about this, or they are thinking about this in a much more kind of tangible issue to have to deal with, isn't it?
For sure, yeah.
We had a conversation this week or last week, I can't remember, about someone was looking at servicing for equipment.
Yeah.
And then we were looking at, okay, well, why don't we treat that like an insurance premium or an insurance model type of approach? And just looking at maybe, well, how does another industry charge? Okay, it may not seem immediately obvious how that transfers over into your sector, but there's probably a lot more crossover if you start thinking about it creatively. And
yeah, sure.
So that's the revenue side of it. And then the cost side of it is just looking at, well, what's this going to cost us in terms of direct costs, indirect costs, what kind of overheads have we got?
Well, and also, what is it that costs?
Yeah.
Is it actually that last 5% of customization that costs all the money? That 80-20. Where does the cost really come from? And there's techniques like value-added analysis, value-added engineering, where you try and break down all of the value that the customer sees, and you try and map that to, well, how much does it cost to deliver that bit of value? And maybe, the delivery in 24 hours at the end has huge value but doesn't cost you very much. Or the customization of that little bit has a little bit of value but actually costs you an enormous amount because of the disruption. So I think the structure of your costs in terms of what you have to do and what you don't, that's important.
Yeah.
But like you say there about how much of it can you make variable that's currently fixed? Because a lot of businesses really struggle when they've got big fixed costs, don't they? Especially if they've got variable demand.
And I think, given the current climate that we're in, I think there'll be more and more businesses looking at how do we variabilise our costs. And that may not necessarily mean outsourcing it all to some other country, which is actually there's a trend to onshore, or at least there was.
Reshoring,
Reshoring. But, I think it's that we are in a climate now, I think, where businesses probably need to think about this, or they are thinking about this in a much more kind of tangible issue to have to deal with, isn't it?
For sure, yeah. And we talked there about reshoring. We talked about maybe turning some things into variable costs. Even things like office space used to be regarded as a fixed cost for everybody. And yet now with the flexible working and work from home, a lot of big companies are selling off property left, right and centre, surrendering leases, not renewing, and having a much more sort of flexible, dynamic way of working. So their whole infrastructure costs of running a business are very different. And then there's a lot more of a trend for outsourcing, as we've seen it ourselves. People were outsourcing to us things to do, which maybe used to get done in-house.
Well, and I think as well as roles become more specialist as well. So whereas marketing was maybe you could have there's a few roles in marketing. Now there's probably hundreds.
Yeah, true.
When you break it all down to all the different technologies, all the different channels, all the different things.
Well, you can't keep up.
You can't keep up, and no one person can do everything. So by outsourcing, you've got that ability to get the best of both worlds, flex your costs, and get the expertise. So
it does make you think again about the ROI on it. It's funny how managers regard the cost of an in-house employee very differently to how they regard it when they outsource it. They don't think in terms of day rates when you've got an employee, but you're still paying a day rate.
Yeah.
It's just it's the same day rate, same 5 days every week. And yet there's a much laxer attitude to whether I'm getting a return on that, what's happening. Yeah. So I think it does focus the mind a bit. Now I've got to write a check every time I ask for that thing to be done. Yeah. Do I really want it? It's not about discipline.
So I think as well, just on the costs quickly as well, you've got the sort of cost of acquisition, cost of customer acquisition.
Yeah.
And that should really be viewed in light of the lifetime value over on the revenue box of the particular customer or client that you've got, and then comparing those two numbers of what's it cost us to acquire a customer, what's it cost us in terms of what do we make in terms of the lifetime of that customer.
Yeah, true. And it's an adage, isn't it, that all the time the lifetime value of a customer is greater than the cost of acquisition. Do more acquisition, spend more money on acquisition until you reach some sort of sweet spot, tipping point. Good. So we've done quite a tour there of reasonably complex subject.
Yeah.
A business plan on a page.
And there's loads more in it. He goes through lots of the different business models, about 5 or 6 different business models, which I won't go into now. There's also a section in the book around storytelling, using the business model canvas to tell the story, which, as you mentioned before, we've used that for various investment memorandums we've made, where we're trying to get across the story of the business to an investor or a funder.
And you do tell a good story.
I can spin a yarn. I've got a good one about ants.
Maybe save that for next time.
But yeah, so it's well worth having a look at the book. If nothing else, go online. I think we may have a copy of the business model canvas on our website, on our resources page, our insights page. And yeah, if you get 5 minutes this week, it's well worth getting a copy of it, print it off from either our website or just find one online. They're easy to find.
There's loads of them. Just search for it, and the images that crop up are.
Have a coffee and just write it down out of intellectual curiosity.
Yeah. How would you describe it? Show it to your business colleagues and see if they agree.